way to handle this whole process. And so we wanted to move the instruments toward a continuous improvement model. We wanted not just to look at this every 6 years, we wanted to have a protocol that would encourage schools on a regular basis to be thinking about accreditation and about the quality of their program. And so those philosophical backgrounds are kind of what led to the current format for the instruments that we have. On page little I, right behind the, what I'm going to do today, I don't think we'll be here a whole hour and a half. We might. Larry has some other stuff to do when we're done. But I think in about an hour we can make it through the documents that are here, maybe even less, who knows. But I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask whatever questions you may have. I want to focus both on the evaluation instrument, the self-study part itself, and then I want to focus also on the visiting committee handbook. And both documents are in your packet. I would like to encourage you to volunteer to serve on a visiting committee. Not only am I involved in the accreditation program for the Adventist Church, but by virtue of my office, I'm a member of the WASC Commission. Now, accreditation in the United States is handled by about 7 regional accrediting associations. SACS in the South, Northwest Association in the Northwest, there's one called Central States, there's Northeast Association, there's Middle States. So these regional accrediting associations have their own standards. And by virtue of my office, I'm a member of the WASC Commission. They accredit all the schools in California, Hawaii, and the Far East. And so 5 times a year, I go and work with their protocol called Focus on Learning, as well as working with the denominational instruments. So accreditation is kind of a big part of my portfolio in my work. And that may be why they decided they wanted me to present this, as well as having developed the instrument. So we're going to look at the self-study itself and how we put it together and how it could work for you in your school. And then we're going to look at the visiting committee handbook. They're related, and I think that they're both valuable documents for you to consider. So just inside the cover page is the preface, and you'll notice there are 5 different evaluation instruments that we've put together that we hope will work for every school. And again, those of you that came in late, the handouts are gone. Sit by somebody you really think you might like to get acquainted with who has one. It's a thick document about this thick. It's the evaluation instrument and the visiting committee handbook. So you're going to have to just share.
Let me just say.
Okay, Larry's going to help us.
Just one comment on the regional accrediting and this document. Many of you are also co-accredited with your regional accrediting association. Almost all, other than WASC, co-accredit your school, both with the regional and with AAA, using this document. Now, we've had some problems in the recent years in which the school does not let the regional accrediting association know that you're doing an evaluation. And so what happens then is they have to come and do their evaluation after you've done this one. If you want to do it at the same time, using the same instrument, then you need to work with your union office and make sure that there's an open dialogue with the regional accrediting body so that you can do both the accreditation visits at the same time.
Yeah, we're working in the Pacific Union to get this instrument approved by WASC. And that's ongoing right now, but I think it's pretty much everywhere in the United States. This instrument is accepted by the regionals. Typically, what happens is they will send a representative or two to be on the visiting committee. I know that happens in the South and Middle States, and several of the places they want to have a representative on the visiting committee at your school to bring the philosophy of the regional into this accrediting protocol. But the chair, in most cases, is a union director or associate from another union than yours, if you're a secondary school. Secondary schools, the visiting committee is made up of a union director or associate, almost always, or a division person from outside your union. The rest of the members of the visiting committee come from within your union conference. Typically, it's teachers. We try to get a committee together that will represent all the different, or most of the different genres or subject areas that are taught. So there will typically be a liberal arts person, a science person, a math person, an administrator, various people that would make up a visiting committee, but the chair is always someone from outside your union territory. So we have these 5 instruments. There's a small schools instrument, and Larry will speak more about that a little later. We tried to really pare that small schools instrument down when we worked in 2004. What we've heard from the field is that it's still too long. There's too much. The problem is that we maintain in our system that students in the smallest of our schools get the same curriculum as students in the biggest one. We believe that about our system. We've created multi-grade curriculum and delivery methods so that the student in the smallest one-teacher school gets the same education as the one in the largest at Loma Linda Academy with several thousand students. And so to put a document together that will evaluate that program, even at the smallest school, needs to be fairly comprehensive at the elementary level. We cut it about in half, as I recall, from the regular document. And it is a daunting task for a small school head teacher to try and do this whole instrument themselves. I would suggest, though, that in those small schools that the conference office needs to assist them with this. And that they often, that small school head teacher gets the feeling that they're the Lone Ranger and they need to do it all themselves. And I don't think that's even the case in a small school. There's typically a volunteer or two, a board chair, someone else that could take some of the load of putting this self-study together. I do believe, though, that one person in a small school could go through the small schools document in a day and then follow up for another half a day or maybe 2 half days and complete this. So again, in the grand scheme of a 6-year term, someone's shaking their head no, they don't think they could do that. I'm talking about the profile and the things that they have to fill out about the school. There are committees that need to meet and that sort of thing, and that's going to take some extra time. And yeah, it takes everybody that extra time. And again, to make it something that is valuable, rather than just, well, let's just fill in a few blanks and we'll be done with this and go on with what we're really doing, we want this to be central to what we do. So yes, it is an exercise that will take some time. But let's continue. What I did was prepare the K-12 document. That's the one that's the most comprehensive. It covers kindergarten through grade 12, and that's the one I chose to print. Again, all the instruments are on the North American Division website. You can download them and look at them, copy them off, whatever. But there's a small schools, there's a K-8 for schools with more than 4 teachers. There's a K-10 for junior academies, a K-12, and a 9-12 edition. So as we get into the self-study document itself, and this one that I've printed today, you'll see elementary sections, you'll see K-12 sections, you'll see 9-12 sections. So that's what makes it so thick, is we've had to cover all the various grade levels that are possible for a K-12 school. All right, let's see. The next tab I have here is over on page little v, and I've tabbed mine here. The rationale for this whole thing. We believe that the accreditation process has 3 stages. The self-study, where you and your school family go over your program and make a self-evaluation. And then a visiting team comes. And then the third step, which often we say we're done and don't do, is the follow-up section. And that's what we've tried to move this document more toward that follow-up section. What happens after the visiting committee leaves? And so that'll be a focus that you'll hear more of in this presentation. We have the criteria for accreditation. There are 10 of those, and those become the standards. You can see those on little v1 and little v2. Then there's a bunch of stuff on the accreditation process. I would draw your attention to little ix. At the top it says Accrediting Process Coordinating Committee. This is the key committee in a self-study, is the coordinating committee. And it's composed of the principal. And I can't stress enough, we've gone to some schools where the principal said, this accreditation stuff, I'm going to refer that to the curriculum committee. Let them do this. And they're really disassociate themselves from this whole process. And that does not serve the school well. So I would say that as a principal, you need to lead the coordinating committee through this process. You don't have to do all the work yourself, but be the leader that goes through this process. And then representatives from the study committees and the school board. It's not as big a deal in our accrediting protocol as it is in the regionals, but stakeholders are a big deal. The visiting committee will want to know that not just 3 people in an isolated room sat down and put this report together. And you can tell, I'll guarantee you, I've done enough of these, chaired enough of these visiting committees that you can tell if one person did the work, or 2. And so it's important to involve the whole school family in this self-study process. Parents, board members, faculty, staff, students. And there are provisions for all these people to be involved. Typically the coordinating committee is made up of the principal and these representatives from the study committees. Each study committee has about 3 to 5 members we recommend. They coordinate and monitor the self-study process. These are things that the coordinating committee does. They appoint these study committees, identify and build consensus around school-wide areas needing improvement. Now, one thing that happens a lot in a self-study is you'll have a really energetic, determined faculty member in one subject area. And that person has a list of requests about this long and will often want to boss you through this process. They'll want to make sure that everything they want is in this report. The coordinating committee is responsible for leavening that's all the input that comes in from individuals and from the study committees and coming up with a school-wide self-study rather than one that's a compendium of every subject area and every standard, 15 different reports. The coordinating committee's responsibility is to kind of make one report that represents the school-wide issues rather than each one individually. You oversee the development of the school-wide improvement action plans. This was something that was new on this document. We called them SIAPs, and I got in a lot of grief for, it's a SIAP. It's a school-wide improvement action plan. And that's been something that's been hard for some schools to adapt to, and I'll spend some time later explaining about the school-wide improvement action plans and what we expected. And then ongoing follow-up process to monitor the implementation. The next page, little x, is the beginning of a group of checklists, and our committee tried to provide instructions throughout the document that would assist self-study committees and the whole self-study process to make it through this document. And included in that were a number of these checklists. And you can see there, we even have one for the North American Division Office of Education, before the visit and after the visit, a checklist for them to follow.